Do you get short, irritable, maybe even yell at your kids? Then you say a few things that you didn't mean. Later, you feel guilt and shame about how you reacted and wish you could take it all back. Today, I want to give you the hope and the practical tools that will help you to stop being a reactive mother. Welcome to the Slowish Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Alexis. I'm a mama to 2 little girls and a parenting coach. I help moms who are burned out, tired, and stressed feel happy and confident so they can enjoy a little more ease in their daily life. If you want to unlearn parenting and awaken your innate design, then you're in the right place. Alrighty, let's get into today's episode. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we are talking about being reactive. This episode is for the mom who struggles with irritability, frustration, overwhelm, anger, rage, so many of these really hard feelings that cause us to have a reaction. And I will talk a lot in this episode about mom rage because if you've been around here for a hot minute, you know that this is my story. This is what led me to becoming a parent coach because I knew that if I could find a way out, if I could find healing, I wanted to share that with the world. And so, yeah, I think that being reactive it happens for so many reasons, which we'll get into today. But I think that there is so much we can do. And I want to give you that hope today. And I hope that by hearing little bits and pieces of my story that you will find yourself saying, like, I don't have to be this way. I don't have to react. I don't have to be irritable and short and yell. I don't have to be that parent. I get to be who I want to be. And that doesn't happen without a lot of hard work, a lot of this inner work that we need to do to be able to regulate ourselves, to know how to handle ourselves. And so today, what we're really going to be talking about is prevention. I think prevention is key in helping us to not be reactive, especially in the beginning stages, when we're unraveling and we're coming out of, our patterns. We're even just like for the first time acknowledging and noticing our patterns. It's this realization that we have these things going on and they're really hard. And for me, in the beginning, I needed to have some kind of prevention plan, to help me when I started to feel this coming on, this shortness, this irritability. Even for some moms, this might be avoidance. This might be, feeling like you need to hightail it and go into the other room and just leave whatever's going on out there because you're so overwhelmed, you're so frustrated. And so, yeah, this episode is going to kind of give you that blueprint of how to prevent your just knee-jerk reactions when you're feeling triggered, especially by your kids. So the first thing that I'm going to say, and I've already kind of hinted towards this, is that if we don't know how to prevent ourselves from having a knee-jerk reaction, it's really hard, almost impossible, I'd say. At least that's what I see in my practice. It's almost impossible to regulate yourself when you've already flipped your lid or when you're about to flip your lid. We'll talk more about the different steps of prevention, and one of them being this thermometer, noticing where you're at. But for me, it's like if I have no idea what's going on internally, if I have no idea where I'm at on my thermometer, if I all of a sudden just lose it, right? This was me in the beginning. I'm just losing my mind. There is almost no way for me to be able to calm myself down and regulate myself, to be able to utilize those calming tools, which if you are new here and you have no idea about the 14 rage calming tools, I have a whole 8-minute video that will walk you through the 14 calming tools that help me to calm myself down from rage, keep me from getting to that point. And if you want these, they're completely free. You can just comment rage below and I will send you the link so you can get access to the whole video. But I truly believe that, if I could have prevented or known that just prevention was the key, was the tool, I would have been focused a lot more on that. But in the beginning, it was like, I just want to stuff the rage down. I want to stuff the anger down. I want to stuff the frustration down. And so what that did is it looked like me either avoiding situations with my kiddos or just being really short and irritable, being really unkind. And then what would happen is I would get to a point where I was flipping my lid, losing it. It was like I was a pressurized soda bottle that was just going to explode, right? And all of a sudden I would explode. And this was very much my pattern as a child. I was so good at suppression. I was so good at keeping it all in here. And what would happen is all of a sudden, out of nowhere, my parents would say something, do something, and I would lose it. And I would explode. I called myself a ticking time bomb. I was under the belief that I was just an angry human. That's just who I was. And I didn't realize that it was my coping tool. It was my mechanism to actually keep me safe. It was actually supporting me, unfortunately. And that was a really hard realization for me, to realize that these tools that I had, I don't want to call them tools. Let's call them these coping mechanisms that I had come up with, and we each come up with innately because we're human and that's what we do. They were not useful. They weren't actually helping me to be a better human. They weren't actually helping me to be a better mom. What they were doing is they were keeping me stuck in my patterns. And I did that because it was easy. And like I mentioned earlier, we get really nasty and icky when we fall back into our patterns because we're stressed. And there is a way out. You don't always have to be that way. But again, this starts with having a plan and understanding prevention. So, the first part of prevention is going to be noticing your thermometer. So I touched on this earlier, but I want us to think of our thermometer as going from 0 to 10. 0 means like, you're great, you're fine. You can even do 1 to 10. 1 to 10. 1 meaning you're calm, you're great, you're chill, you're able to regulate everything. And right now, I want you to think to yourself, where am I just sitting here? And you might find, because for me, oftentimes, I would find myself living at like a 5 or a 6 because I'm listening to a podcast, I'm cooking dinner, I've got kids screaming in the background, and I'm texting my husband the plan for the evening. It's like I'm up here, it's this constant state of fight and flight. And so once you start checking in with yourself throughout the day and say, okay, where am I at? This is a really good place to start because you're starting to acknowledge and you're starting to notice and turn inward towards the body because we really want to become in tune. And I would have even said I was in tune with my body before, but after really honing in on the thermometer, this was crucial in helping me to know what calming tools to use, to know where I was at, just to give myself I'm at an 8 and I've brought myself down to, a 5. And it gave me I don't know what I'm trying to say. It gave me confidence, I guess, that things were working in, either direction, I guess. And so what I would do if I was going back and what I coach moms to do is when you notice something in your body, I want you to pause and I want you to say, where am I at? And in the beginning, you might notice this after you rage. And moms in my practice are like, what the heck's the point? of noticing after. The point is now you know you're at a 10. And what we can do is we can backtrack, which leads me to number 2 is we need to acknowledge our triggers. And we don't know what our triggers are until we've backtracked. And so what I help moms do in coaching is we're going to look at an isolated event and we're going to walk ourselves backwards through the moments leading up to and until we can't remember or recall anything else. And this would look something like this. So I lost it on my daughter because she spilled milk. And what happened the moment before that was I got a phone call. And the phone call derailed me because it was from the pediatrician. I needed to get into the pediatrician because we're leaving on vacation. Okay, now we back up a little bit more. Did anything else happen before that point? Oh, yeah. I had personally dropped lunch and I had to remake it. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. And then we back up a little more and oh, yeah. I remember, being at the grocery store and this lady looked at me like I was a terrible mother and I felt judged and I felt judgment. And so I was embarrassed. I felt embarrassed and uncomfortable. And then I'm like, is there anything else prior to that? Oh, yeah. Before I left, my husband, he was leaving for work and he kind of gave me a snotty remark about what we were having for dinner tonight. And I felt terrible about myself about having that specific thing for dinner. And now I feel off with him. And was there anything before that point? And again, so we're just bringing ourselves back through the timeline of our day and trying to look for triggers. And so what happens after you've done this multiple times is we start seeing patterns. And so obviously in coaching, as I get to know you more and I get to hear more of your stories and hear where you're struggling, I get to see patterns and I can pinpoint them and put them together to give you a really easy blueprint of here's where you're struggling. And then we can talk through, here are some ways to work through that. But the key is knowing the trigger. So once you know that trigger, you are able to say, okay, so every time that my child hits me, this is my trigger. This is my moment. So now I am going to start to look for common patterns that are coming before the trigger, not only for myself, but now for my kiddo, right? And so with all of this, this is a lot of intensive inner work that has to happen. And I don't believe that it's just as simple as when my child yells or when my child hits me, it's triggering. And I think often we get ourselves stuck in this is my child's fault. If my child didn't yell, I wouldn't be triggered. But I promise you, you would find something else to be triggered about. It's amazing to me how I will think I've worked through one trigger and I think that I'm good and then something else resurfaces. And it's actually a very similar issue and I haven't fully worked through it. So yeah, knowing your trigger is going to really help. Because the next step is having calming tools, which I shared earlier. If you want my 14 free rage calming tools, this 8-minute long video, you can comment rage below and I will send it to you. But these calming tools are what you're going to use when you start to notice for the first time in your thermometer where you're at. And in the beginning, like I said, you might notice at a 10, right? Or a 9. I'm about to rage. 9 is I'm almost there. And it's what calming tool will help me to release this anger? And maybe it's throwing pillows, maybe it's stomping really hard on the floor like a toddler, honestly. Maybe it's doing full body shakes. These are just a few of my favorites for when we get to that point. But now that you've started noticing your triggers, maybe you're noticing yourself at a 6 and you're okay, I'm at a 6, my hands are getting really sweaty, let me go ahead and let me just wash my hands under some cold water, and that might help you get unstuck. And so the cool part is these calming tools get to be used for all different parts of your thermometer. That's why I invite you in the very beginning of the video of what am I trying to say? I invite you to try these different calming tools for yourself at a calm in a calm state. I don't want you trying these calming tools when you are in the moment, when you're in a heightened state, because it's really hard to access them. But if you've already had some good feelings around some of the calming tools you've tried, you're way more likely to try them out and to use them in the heat of the moment. So again, we're going to notice our thermometer, notice where we're at. We're going to start acknowledging our triggers. We're going to start working our way back through a scenario so we can understand the signs and the symptoms. And so if I start noticing that my hands get really sweaty before I'm going to lose it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a calming tool that's going to help my hands to cool down so I can, bring on the logic, which is that prefrontal cortex. And so this part is really, really critical in helping you to actually stop the frustration, the anger, the rage, whatever's coming up, and be able to handle things in a really healthy way. Now, step 4 is going to be an SOS plan. And this SOS plan is like, oh my gosh, I can't get my act together. The calming tools aren't working because I'm at a 9 and I didn't notice myself sooner and I need a second. And this is where you're going to literally make a plan for, and I want you to write it down very specifically. Like, what am I going to do when I'm at a 10? I'm just on the edge of it. I'm going to react. I know I am. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen, right? You can feel it. What am I going to do? And is there a calming tool I'm going to use? Is it the noise, the overstimulation of my kids? Do I need to put them on a movie or a screen? Give them something to do? This is think of emergency, right? What can you do? Emergency situation. Is it a snack? What can I do to just be able to bring myself and rein myself back in? And this is kind of that last case scenario. And so having this, there's so much for me confidence in knowing that if I have this in my back pocket, if I lose it, for me, it's the screen. I can put my kid on a screen to give myself a minute, so that way then I can follow through and I can show up as the parent that I want to. Because here's something that I wish more parents understood about parenting. If you yell at your kid, you spank your kid, you do whatever, timeout, whatever you want to do to discipline them. I was going to say correct them, but I feel like that's pretty harsh. You're disciplining them. When you are getting into that discipline, you're not here. You're not in logic. You're just mad. You're frustrated. You're triggered. Imagine having a conversation when you and the child are in a calm state. Kiddo is also not going to be hearing you when you are getting angry. They're afraid, they're fear, they're not feeling safe and secure. And so we can start to work through these issues in those calm moments. And so what I want to do is I want to get a mama to a calm state so that way she can be there for her kiddo, she can regulate the kiddo, and then they can have a conversation about what has happened. And this has to happen in this sequence for real change. We can put band-aids on things by reprimanding kids, by yelling at them, by, spanking them, by putting them on timeout, doing all these things that are, common parenting things, but we're not going to have true change, like child not doing something again, until you've had a deep conversation with them. And I know what you're saying. Okay, but my child is 2. How am I supposed to have a deep conversation? Just having a conversation at all. A child is not going to hear you. It's like when they are in that moment and they're frustrated too, and you're frustrated. They can't hear anything. And for me, I don't want to waste my breath. I don't want my words to basically be wasted. I don't want my breath to be wasted with my child. I also don't want to say something that could really hurt them in the heat of the moment because I'm frustrated, right? So it's really important here to have an SOS plan, write it down, and give yourself the confidence, and also use it. Use it once in a while. Try it out. Give yourself a moment, and then what you're going to notice is there's some confidence in the ability to do what you need to do to get your kid in a calm, safe space and put yourself in a calm, safe space. Get yourself calmed down, get yourself regulated, so that way you can show up the way you really want to, and you don't react, you don't say the things you don't mean, and you don't make a not great lasting impression on your kiddos. So if you're listening to this and you're going, okay, this is all great, but I want more of a blueprint. I want to know how to stop, how to stop in the moment. What am I supposed to do? This process. And so I believe it's a 5-step process within my Stop Yelling workshop. I also go over the prevention that I just went through, but in a little bit more detail. It comes with a workbook and all of that wonderful stuff. So I will go ahead and link that below if you would like more information. But I just want to give you hope that you do not have to be a reactive parent. And also, even after you've begun healing, you may get caught up and you might accidentally go back there because you're stressed, because that's easy for your brain. And sometimes we need to get back on track. And so I just want to encourage you today that you can do it. You can become the mom that your kiddos need and that you absolutely want to be. It just takes a little bit of work and intention. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, make sure you comment them below. And if you would like more content like this, you want to have a better understanding of how to regulate yourself and how to show up as a mama, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, of course, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching and happy parenting.